Hey everyone, and welcome back to Country Music Made Me. Thank you so much for joining us once again. If you haven't already, please be sure to check out our website, countrymusicmademe.com. There you can listen to all of our episodes and also sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive content and also stay up to date on all of our upcoming guests. Just head over to countrymusicmademe.com and hit that subscribe button. You can also find us on any streaming platform, so if streaming is your thing, just head over to your favorite, search Country Music Made Me, and give us a follow there as well. On today's episode, we are excited to welcome Canadian singer-songwriter Tyler Joe Miller. Now, he burst onto the scene in 2019 with his single, Pillow Talkin. Now, that song went to #1, and he became the first independent Canadian country artist to do so. His second single, I Would Be Over Me Too, also went to #1. It was an amazing start to his career, but as we found out during our interview, his musical journey actually began quite a few years before that. So please enjoy our conversation with Tyler Joe Miller. Usually when I'm doing my research, I can find little tidbits from like the younger years of little things that happen. But for you, a lot of the time, it just begins sort of right around the Pillow Talking era and moves on from there. So I'm interested to hear about the beginnings of this musical journey. And I think one of the moments where it began was at your summer cabin. Is that one of the places that music kind of came out of the family and helped you to grow a love of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I found like the love for country music. Yeah, I would say my dad is a bit more on like the rock and roll side. So like, I grew up with Zeppelin being one of my favorite bands.
Oh, okay.
Because it was my dad's favorite band. But then my mom's side of the family was definitely more on the countryside. So they're always just cranking like Dixie Chicks and, Brad Paisley and Garth Brooks and George Strait and Alan Jackson, that sort of thing. And so I kind of just grew up with like, those were the songs that I knew. And so even when it comes down to like covering songs, it's like, yeah, I could play the like new stuff going on, but like, I'm also not super good with lyrics.
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm going back to like the childhood, like, oh man, I've known these lyrics forever. So like, even right now, like we're still like, pretty much covering a lot of Paisley stuff because he's my favorite artist of all time.
Oh, okay.
And, I grew up listening to his stuff, but I'd say that's where I kind of found a lot of my love for country music, and it kind of brings me back to listening to like Time Well Wasted and like Mud on the Tires. I think Mud on the Tires was the first album I ever bought. Either that or Time Well Wasted, and I remember listening to. My mom would always have the Judds playing on cassette.
Oh, okay.
All the time. Yeah. But yeah, I mean my history is a bit, there's not a whole lot on it musically. And I think it's because like most of the impact has started at Pillow Talkin.
Right, yeah.
And the rest of the stuff was just kind of, there's little tidbits here and there, and we can definitely get into that. But
yeah, definitely. Yeah. And on the sort of personal side, on the family side, you don't mention them too much on social media. You've had a few posts for Father's Day with your dad, but I did see one post from a couple of years ago with your grandfather. I think you call him Poppy, maybe, from what I saw in the post. And he was turning 89 years old at the time a few years ago. So I wanted to ask about him and just what he's meant for your journey, just on a personal side and for you as a person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Poppy, yeah, I would go to his house after school all the time. And like him and my grandma would take, it was Poppy and Nana. Those
okay.
Grandparents. Here, my other grandparents are in passed away now, but from Ontario.
Oh, okay.
And also, I gotta say, my dad was rock and roll, but like I know a lot of my dad's side of the family is also huge country fans out in Thunder Bay and Fort Worth.
Right.
But yeah, Poppy, yeah, he's probably been he has been the closest grandparent that I've been to, and he actually he doesn't live too far from me. He's
Oh, really?
yeah, pretty close.
Nice.
Yeah, and so yeah, I think a lot of music stuff also came from him as well. Like I know that he played guitar, uh, and uh, yeah, I don't know exactly what music he played when he was playing guitar, but
Right.
I think there's definitely some country in there. I gotta say, but yeah, Poppy, he's like a pillar of our family. And yeah, he's having a bit of a rough time right now, but he's a fighter, and so yeah, he's always gonna be kicking ass. I know that.
That's awesome. And on the hard work side of things, you are an extremely hard worker when it comes to things that you are passionate about from, what I've seen just doing some research on you. And so that hard work, who instilled that within you? Was that a whole family thing that you sort of gained that within?
Well, yeah. Thanks for saying I'm a hard worker. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, I think my family instilled that in me. Like my dad's definitely he's a guy that's always on the go. I think he definitely taught me to be a hard worker, and I think it's also like a railway thing. So like my grandpa Poppy,
Yeah.
he's also like worked on the railway his whole life. So
Oh,
CN
wow.
Railway, and my dad also worked on the railway
Oh, okay.
most of his life as well. So yeah, just like two hardworking men that just kind of showed me what's what and how to work, and my stepdad as well, Bill. He's also just a hardworking guy, and they're always just putting the time in, and I think I just grew up with a lot of males that kind of showed me what it means to put the work in, and you can't expect reward without putting the time in and putting in the blood and sweat and all that. And so yeah, I think I have a lot of men to kind of thank for that. And yeah, I think it comes down from generations. So
Right.
yeah, we can thank Poppy for that. We can thank Grandpa Joe. We can thank all those kind of people in my life that it kind of went down through the generations, and yeah, so I think those men in my life really kind of helped put that in. I mean, you just can't expect anything to come for free, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I think I got it from.
Right. And I was going to save this question for later, but kind of goes with the hard work. So I'll ask it now. It feels like within your journey, country music wasn't a dream. For many artists, it's a dream that begins, when they're 5, when they're 10 years old, they have this dream of being a country musician. But for you, it feels like it's been more of a passion. And like I say, you're a very hardworking, passionate person. And so when it comes to country music, do you find you have a different outlook on success because it's not necessarily this dream that you had, but it's just a passion that you want to work hard to be good at?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, it's funny because when we started doing like you do like radio tour, going across Canada to pitch your music to radio stations,
Right.
and I remember doing that, and I remember thinking like, for me, like it didn't really matter if they added my songs or not. And I think I definitely said it to a few of the stations as well, because it wasn't my paycheck. Like
Right.
I was a contractor for most of my music career so far. It's only been through the pandemic.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I was, I'd be doing radio interviews while, I'm or not swinging a hammer anymore, but like I was like painting
Right.
for the last couple of years of my contract, and I was doing painting. And so it's like I'm 30 feet up on a ladder sometimes, or up on a boom lift, and I'm on a radio call, and they're like, oh, so what are you doing? It's like, I'm on a construction site.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that it was like the dream to be like a country star. I don't even know if that is the dream still. I'm just kind of riding this wave and seeing where it takes me. But
Right.
yeah, I would say I just have a big passion for music and for telling stories, and so I think that's I think my measure of success is not exactly, awards or amount of streams or radio plays or how many number ones or anything like that. It always has been about the music and about the people. And I mean, I feel like I've only got to see like the radio and the streams and that sort of side of the business so far,
Right. Yeah.
which is a bit ironic, but we're now getting into the season where I'm finally able to actually get out and play the shows that we have been booking. Last year was a little bit different. A lot of things got shut down, but yeah, now I finally feel like I get to be out in front of the crowd, in front of the people, and see them sing their songs back to me. And I remember the first moment when I heard that, and it was at the Calgary Stampede. And
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I'll set it up for a second for people who don't necessarily know your journey. So basically, you released Pillow Talkin in December 2019. Your debut single, Independent, it went number one in May of 2020. And then you released I Would Be Over Me Too on June 5th, 2020, and it went number one October of 2020. And you're the first Canadian country independent artist to have his first single and his second single go number one. And so within that was the start of your journey. So December 2019, your first single's released. It's not until, so it was the Calgary Stampede in 2021, in July, I believe, that you're actually able to play your first show. And so stepping out on that stage at the Calgary Stampede, what was that like?
It was unreal. Like, so I actually used to play in a band back in the day.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a minute. So
yeah. So, but like I was sort of used to being on a stage in front of people,
right?
And I would play like backup guitar for other country artists for a little bit, for a couple of years, but not that big. Like, so when I stepped out on stage, it was just kind of like a holy crap moment. Like, what is going on? And we start playing the first song, and it's funny because it was my first show actually being in front of people playing my songs. So there's a lot of people that like, they still don't know of Tyler Joe Miller yet. They know Pillow Talkin and I'll Be Over Me Too, and Fighting, all those other songs. But we start playing the first song, and it was my single Sometimes I Do. And right as I sing line like sipping single, seeing double, cooking chicken on a show, all of a sudden you see people light up. They're like, oh, that's
it's
this
that
guy. Yeah. And so sometimes at shows I'll say, yeah, I'm the Pillow Talkin guy, in case you don't know. And yeah, when we got to, just those songs that have, been played on radio, so many people are singing them back. But man, when we hit that Pillow Talkin, we left it for the end of the set. And there's a moment where it at almost the end where I go, I want it. And the crowd, like I step back from the mic and the crowd sings it.
Yeah.
I just went, holy crap. I was just blown away. Like everybody's singing it. Like 5,000 people or how many people were there. And it's just this unreal moment of like, everything makes sense, I think, in a way where it's like, there's so much stuff in the business where it's like, oh man, I have to do this and I have to do this. And like, it's such a pain in the butt sometimes to be in the music business.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun parts, but there's a lot of business side of things behind the scenes that people don't see. And, but it makes it worth it. When you hear a huge crowd singing your songs back to you, it's like, oh, that's why I'm doing this. And so, it was a huge moment for me. And it also just got me excited because, it's funny, like thinking back to like my family and people like that, like, maybe I'll send this over to Poppy, but like, thank you, Poppy, for, loving a kid like me and always believing in me, and my whole family, like for always being there for me. And hopefully they get to finally come out and see a damn show.
Yeah.
But yeah, those moments, it just, it's hard to explain it. Really, it makes it worth it. Absolutely.
That's awesome. And now let's go back. You mentioned your first band. This is something that gets skipped over as far as I can see. Every interview I listen to you, it's just sort of, I was in a band before and now I'm doing this, but I want to dig into this. So Dear Adeline, I believe was the band. From what I saw, it formed about 2013?
That's probably about right. Yeah.
Okay. Like and so how did it form? What was sort of the thought going into that? Was that a sort of post high school, just something fun to do? Or was it I enjoy music, so let's try and give it a try? Or what was it?
Yeah. So I was actually, my whole like music journey really started when I started going to church when I was in high school.
Oh, okay.
And one of my best friends ended up bringing me, and I thought it was super boring at first, and then there was like girls and music and games, and I was like, okay, I'm in.
Right.
But no, then I started going to like a youth group thing there, and some guy there was one of the music guys. I think he was running sound or something like that, and a lot of people were leaving because they're graduating, and so one of the guys goes, "Hey, you're extroverted. You'd be good on stage. Like, do you know how to play guitar? I know Zeppelin and Metallica. Good enough. Do you know how to sing? Not sure yet."
Oh, wow. So had you sung before that? Did you know you had a voice at all?
No, like as kids, like I think my parents have videos of me like pretending to sing and just joking around, that sort of thing. Like I never knew that I could actually sing. I'm still a little bit surprised. I look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, are you sure? But yeah, no, I didn't really know that I could actually sing until those moments. And
wow.
And so I started playing guitar and singing at the same time, which I think really helped, because I hear if you start playing guitar without singing or singing without playing guitar, it's very hard to kind of do both at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
So like I cannot sing without my guitar. It's just,
really?
My guitar. Well, I can, but I just rather have my guitar there. It's way more comfortable, but
right.
It's just what I'm used to. But yeah, I didn't know that I could really sing until somebody asked me to, really.
Wow.
And me and my buddy Gareth and our buddy Matt would just jam out all the time. It was just guitar, bass, drums, and we would just jam out and play like this. Like we played a ton of different music. We do like screamo and like punk and like just a bunch of stuff, like angsty stuff that you get into in your teenage years.
Right. Yeah.
And but yeah, I kind of grew up and grew out of a lot of those genres. But I was that's where the music journey started, was at church. And there's a ton of great musicians that come out of playing church music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially the harmonies are always good. But and it's funny too, because I checked into some of your podcasts before coming on here, and I watched the Tim Neufeld one.
Oh, okay.
And like me and Tim are buddies. I love Tim. And I remember going to like Starfield shows, and I had
really?
like a signed hat from Tim and his brother and the rest of the Starfield crew.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was like my olden days. But it's funny because we were actually at this show by he was one of my favorite artists. His name is Aaron Gillespie. He's in this screamo band called Under Oath, and then he started doing his own stuff, and just a phenomenal musician. And so I always just really looked up to him, and he was doing a show here in Langley. And so I went to it, and I remember I was out on the steps with him. For some reason, he was outside and I was outside at the same time, and we got talking, and I was just kind of like telling him that I wanted to be a musician and this and this and this. And he's like, well, what steps are you taking to do that? And I wasn't really taking any.
Right.
So, like, he was kind of calling me out on stuff to be like, you can't expect to be up here when you're not doing the work to get there. And he goes, do you have a band? And I was like, no. He's like, well, start a band, man. He's like, you got to start a band. Get like the dudes that you trust the most, get them together and go start a band and play music that you love. And so he really inspired me, and he almost told me to not do it at first, because I just didn't seem like I wanted to put in the work.
Right. Yeah.
It was really good that he called me out on it. And So he's like, you know what, if you want this, like, go for it and go get your band. And so I walked inside, had to go pee. So I went into the bathroom, and a few of my good buddies that I played with at this church were there.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, Jordan, we got to start a band. I was just talking to Aaron outside. We got to start a band. And they're like, okay. And my other buddy was in there. And so, we decided in the bathroom at this church that we were going to start a band.
Wow.
And we formed Dear Adeline.
And now you did have some local success. I saw that you won Best in Vancouver at one point, a competition. And so during that time, what was your thought after you had formed? Was it something that you were thinking about trying to chase? Or again, was it just something fun at the time that you weren't expecting too much from?
Yeah, I think I was trying to chase that. You know, we were really putting a lot of time and a lot of effort and into that band, and like we really loved the music and we loved what we were doing, and there's a lot of people that were coming to our shows, every single show we were putting on. So
right.
We were loving it. We just didn't have direction. We didn't know what to do with it. We didn't know really much about the music industry at all. I still barely do. And
right. Yeah.
And so it was kind of hard to navigate that as like early 20s, trying to figure out what to do with this, alternative rock or pop rock band, whatever the hell we were.
Right.
Like, what do we do with this? And how do we, bring this to the next level? We just didn't know. We didn't have the right resources for it. So I think we played ourselves out to a point where it was like, all right, I think I'm like, for myself, like I wrote all the music. And so I felt like I sort of wrote myself out of that genre too.
Right.
And so I sort of hit a point where it was like, yeah, I think I'm done. And it was just really weird because you kind of hit a point where you're like, yeah, I think it's time to call it quits. And that's it. And I think I always knew that if I was going to go back to music, because I stopped doing music for a few years.
Oh,
and
okay.
I was actually just doing like a job for music stuff, like at a church at the point, before I made my split from that. But
okay.
That was kind of like my main job, was doing music stuff there. And then I just kind of like, I stopped doing music there as well. And so I just stopped doing music, and I was kind of okay with it. And I mean, I don't know if this is where we're going, but I guess I'm going to steer it in this direction. But
sure,
like,
yeah.
it kind of works chronologically, because when I was at this church, it's when I ended up doing this trip down to Guatemala.
Yeah.
And that's where my passion really started.
Right.
So I did a trip down to Guatemala to like build homes for impoverished communities and stuff down there. And we do like baby rescues for kids that are malnourished, and we build schools and like water supplies, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
And so I went down there just because I had a couple weeks vacation. And I was like,
okay.
well, I got to use these before the year's up, so I might as well go do a trip. And Guatemala was the first one out. So me and a few friends went, and I fell in love with the place. And that's where a guy heard me with my guitar strumming and singing one of my tunes out on the, balcony at night.
Right.
And in the morning, he comes up to me and he goes, hey, was that you playing your guitar and like singing country music? I was like, yeah, I guess it was country. Like, yeah. And he goes, oh, I didn't know that you're doing that. And I was like, I'm not really doing any music, really.
Right.
Like, I'm just, enjoying, helping people and just, yeah, I write music, and I guess when I write it, it comes out country. And even like my old band, like Dear Adeline, like the songs were telling stories, every single one of them.
Right.
And so I always loved that concept of telling a story in every single song. And so, that's what country music does best. And so I knew I was going to go back to those roots, but he was like, I was just running my contracting company and just enjoying helping people. And he's like, well, what if you got into country music and you built a platform for yourself where, where people not only want to hear you have to sing, but what you have to say, and you can use that to influence more people to help in more areas and stuff like that. And I was like, well, yeah, I can't say no. Like that sounds like a great idea. So I just put my name out there to start playing for people. So I was just a backup guy, and I was playing
Okay.
guitar and backup vocals, some like mandolin sort of thing for other artists for a bit, and then
Right.
ended up getting found by my label because of like a Facebook cover video that I
Oh,
did.
is that how it went?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I got found online, but also there were some conversations going around town that I think one of my managers who's with my label caught wind of, just like hearing my name around town a little
Oh,
bit
okay.
as like just a writer and a singer and that sort of thing. But yeah, I wasn't really doing my own thing. And then a buddy of mine asked me to play a show with him and like open up. I was like, oh crap, I got to put a band together. So I brought my buddies from, that used to play at church with me. They
Right.
were like, hey man, if you're going to country music, we're coming with you. Like we love that. And so that's still my band today.
Oh, I was going to ask, yeah, how many of the guys are still with you?
Yeah, most of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We're also trying to, like, you can only bring a certain amount. Once your prices start going up, you can add more people to your roster, sort of.
Right. Yeah.
But, yeah, most of my guys are still with me, which is awesome. And we ended up getting found off of like a Facebook video. But after that was seen and there's some conversation with the label, I'm playing the show. And then they came out and saw me, and I was like, well, I just have some of these songs. I'll learn some covers, like just threw it together.
Right.
They saw me play live, and they liked my voice and loved kind of what I was doing. And they're like, hey, you want a record deal? And I mean, there was more conversations than that, but
yeah.
But basically it happened pretty fast.
And so how important was that? Because like you say, with your past, it always sort of turned out that you didn't know what direction to take. You didn't know the next steps. You didn't know how to necessarily grow this. And so without the label stepping in and saying, we can help you, do you think that you would have gone on this solo artist journey, or do you think you'd still just be playing with others?
That's a good question. It's hard to say, because yeah, I wouldn't have known the next steps.
Right.
I think the dream for like musicians, if you actually want to do something, is you get signed by a label.
Yeah, exactly.
And because they have the resources, they have the people, they know what to do with the artists to get them to the next level. And so if I was doing it on my own, I don't know, I might still be painting. Like, I think I had the idea that I'd like to do something on my own, and that was the plan. But I, like, even when the label reached out to me, like, I didn't feel like I was ready to be doing that yet.
Right.
I felt like I was ready. But yeah, so I don't know if I would have taken those next steps to actually try to, put myself out there as just my own solo artist. But I did have the plans, and I did have like a single that I was trying to get ready to go. And like a buddy of mine, Jordan Orbick, was and my buddy Jordan Waller, who's my front of house now, they were kind of like co-producing this song of mine, and which never got released because then ended up getting the record deal and we went a different direction. But but yeah, so like I was putting the work in and like trying to get things set up for me actually becoming my own solo artist. And I remember sitting down with my buddy Jordan as well, and like being like, all right, this is what we should be doing, like this is what I want to do. But still, again, just didn't have the direction, didn't know what to do with it. And so I think it's, people just go and play the bar scenes a lot, and you're just hoping for that one chance that, the right ears are there and hear your music. But yeah, so it's hard to say. I feel like I'm a bit of a go-getter, but I don't know if I don't know. Those dreams are pretty big.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to say, because it's, it's such a big thing that you never really know if it's, attainable.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
That's awesome.
But, we're here now, so I don't really think about that whole
lot. Exactly. You don't need to think about that. And when was your first trip down to Nashville?
First trip down to Nashville was maybe like 3 years ago.
Okay. And so as an artist who's just starting a journey, who didn't necessarily have this dream of country music or have a background in, you did some writing, but I'm not sure, how much co-writing or anything you did. But when you went down to Nashville, how much of an eye opener was that? And how much have you grown as an artist from going down there?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it is. That's a whole different caliber down there. It's nuts. And so I think I might have done one trip before that, 3 years. I think I did one on my own, like without a label. Like I went just before going to Guatemala. I think
Okay.
went in transit, but
Okay.
but I went and I just wanted to soak in the city and get a feel for it, and I booked like a couple like small rights, but not, it was only a few. And
Right.
but yeah, as somebody that didn't co-write before, that is a whole different ball game.
Right.
Like I was not ready for, it's like, oh, I had this idea and this title and these lyrics, but it may all change because this other person has this other idea. Or like, it's weird when you have to separate yourself from the music.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do as an artist and as a writer.
Right.
And so it can be tough too if it's like, oh man, I've had this title that I've been working on for a long time, and then the title changes and it's like, wait, but it's supposed to be this. Like it's really hard to let go of those things. And so
Right.
but man, I would say that I've grown a crazy amount since going down to Nashville and writing with those writers down there. The main thing that I learned was you got to get all the crappy ideas out to filter through to find the good.
Right. Yeah.
And like, there's some artists or some writers that you'll write with, and it's like, all right, we need a song. Anybody got an idea? And they're like, yeah, maybe this, blah, blah. And they just like start strumming something and just spitting these words out that it's like, that was gibberish. But then all of a sudden you find this one word or this one sentence that they said, and it's like, oh wait, but this works. And then people play off each other.
Right.
And it's really interesting how people write, and people do it differently down there as well. But yeah, just the art of figuring out how to pull out the good ideas from people is
right.
It's crazy. It's phenomenal. And I'm still learning how to do that. And it also takes like a bit of courage, maybe a lot of courage, because like in my mind, I'm like, I have to think of the perfect idea before I say it.
Right.
So
yeah.
I'm like typing on my laptop, even though we have like a shared Google Doc. I'm like, no, I'm like, I'll try to type this out first, but it's just like, no, like tell us, spit it out, like say it, because even if it's not a good idea, it can make them think of something else that is a good idea. And
right.
So
yeah.
It's just really cool kind of how it works. And yeah, so I think if anything, Nashville and the writers down there I write with has taught me to not be scared to say a bad idea.
Right.
Because it helps filter through to find the good ones. And
yeah,
I think that's really what, separates the amateurs from the pros. And man, I'm still trying to be separated from an amateur to the pro. I'm still far behind.
And what about the emotional side of it? Because fighting, you talked about that being a song where you were able to open up emotionally and maybe tap into some areas you hadn't before. Now in Nashville, when you first started going, were you able to sort of open yourself up emotionally, or is that something you've really had to work on to be able to do that?
Yeah, that's well, one of my first songs I wrote in Nashville was "I'll Be Over Me Too," and that one was it was written about a past relationship, and so the song when we wrote it was actually a ballad, but when producing it, my producer Danik heard it a different way and was like, "Whoa, okay, this is a tempo song, like this is upbeat." But it made it more tongue-in-cheek, which like I'm a very sarcastic person.
Right.
So it was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. It makes it not so sad, but there's still a lot of emotion in the song.
Right.
If you play it as a ballad, it's super sad. So I think immediately I had to, pull those emotions out and stuff. And I'm also like, I'm an open book person. So the
Right.
emotions, like I'm pretty open about it already. But when it came to fighting, we actually had before any of my other songs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I actually wrote that, um, with my buddies Dan Swinimer, Wes Mack, and Dave Faber, and it was our first song that any of us had written like all together.
Oh, okay.
And we thought it was off to not a good start because like I had two herniated discs in my neck.
Oh, really?
I don't even know how I did it, but so like my neck was like super messed up. The other three guys all had back issues. And
Oh,
so,
really?
like Dan was literally laying on the ground on some like spike mat that like helps
Oh,
with your
geez.
back. Wes was sitting on the ground too because he couldn't like sit in the chair properly or whatever. And all of us were just in bad condition. And I ended up just kind of like, we chatted for like 2 hours before we wrote the song. And we were just kind of talking about things that we were going through and struggles. And so I opened up about my life, and I just wasn't really happy with where I was at. And kind of like who I was at that moment. I just wasn't super happy with the man that I wasn't yet.
Right.
And so I kind of just started opening up about that and kind of about my inner demons. And all of a sudden when you open up about those things, you don't realize that so many other people are dealing with those things.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden the other guys are like, yeah, I'm dealing with that too. Or you got this, but I got this. And it was really cool. And so we're like, well, crap. Well, maybe that's the song. And so I kind of shared with them this idea of fighting. And I was like, yeah, this like, people can think it's about some bar fight or whatever, but it's like, no, it's fighting with yourself to become a better man. And
Yeah.
so, I think that's one thing that has been a bit more of a breeze with me is being able to open up and kind of tap into the emotional side of things for writing.
Yeah.
Just because I think I'm an open book in general. And so I think that definitely helps with it for sure.
Right. And now your newest single, Wild as Her. This is an interesting single because all of your past music, I listened to it and I'm like, yeah, I can tell that's Tyler Joe. But your new single, the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, this is a great song. Who is this? And I actually had to look because there's a different sound to it. And I was kind of thinking about it. And I don't like to label stuff, but it kind of feels like your past music was like Canadian country, whereas this song feels like it has more of that Nashville vibe to it. And so just talk about the single and sort of your perspective on, that whole musicality to it. And if you do think that it sounds different from your past stuff.
Yeah, I think it sounds different for sure. And I sort of feel like, the last EP was like first chapter of Tyler Joe Miller.
Right.
And I feel like this is like now it's the next chapter sort of thing. So it kind of like opens up a little space to have like a bit of a different sound, but like it's funny because like the next single out is going to sound drastically different than Wild as Her as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I kind of like it though, because I think it shows that, as an artist, I'm able to be diverse and have different sounds, but all still within the same, wheelhouse sort of thing. And
right,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, this song's a bit different. And I also wasn't a writer on this one, but I got pitched the song a couple years ago.
Oh,
and this one's
okay.
very interesting because I got pitched the song a couple years ago, but I wasn't ready for it yet. Like, I think for part of my brand is like the songs and the stories that I choose to tell.
Yeah.
And we just weren't ready for that story yet.
Oh, okay.
We haven't done a love song yet. And this is kind of like halfway there.
Right. Yeah.
And so we finally hit a point where I was like, okay, I can do half a love song now. But how the music world works is very interesting because somebody else cut it 2 years before I cut it.
Oh, really?
They're in Texas.
Oh, okay.
But like it didn't end up going to radio. And so the writers were like, hey, we know that, if you release songs as singles, like it's going to radio, especially like in Canada. It's like, we really want you to cut this one. And I was like, you know what, let's do it. And so like just a couple versions, which is weird, but it's like, that's just how the music industry works as well. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, Chris Stapleton, Tennessee Whiskey is a cover of George Jones, like 30 years later.
Yeah.
Like, and so there's so much of that happening, but this song, we're just like, you know, the writers reached out to me so long ago and we're like, yes, this is a song that I want to do. And so the writers were Kelly Archer, Brett Tyler, and I write with those two, and they're just phenomenal writers. And then Morgan Wallen.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah. And so it definitely has his kind of vibe in it. And you can tell by like the vocal runs and stuff like that. And so, yeah, when we cut it, we're like, we have the permission to have like a bit of a new sound. And I think that song was just, it was so well written, and it definitely does have a bit more of like a Nashville sound to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe it's just like, it's an American sort of sounding tune.
Mm-hmm.
And Danik just did great production on it. But I think it was the writing style that really makes it sound that different. And because like three of the four singles I've put out so far, before Wild as Her, I was a writer on. So I feel like it had like that sort of feel. It had one feel to it.
Yeah.
But now also like my writing has changed. You know, I think I've developed, you know, a lot of, you know, different aspects to my writing. And I think I've evolved in a lot of ways in my writing. So I think a lot of my stuff that I've written on in the future is going to sound different as well. But yeah, I don't even know what it is about the song. I think it's the writing that makes it sound that different. But I mean, on the production side too, I think that Danik did some different things, and maybe sounds a bit more like polished and stuff in a way as well. But
definitely. Yeah.
That's
awesome. And so coming into this summer, a lot of exciting things happening. You're going to be playing at Cavendish with Luke Combs headlining. You're going to be playing at Rock and River with Tim McGraw headlining. You're going to be headlining the Monashee Music Festival yourself. And so what is this like to sort of be entering your first summer of full festivals and being able to be on these huge lineups?
It's it's still weird. It's like, are you sure I'm on this?
Right.
And like when we when we got offered the Luke Combs one, it's like, oh, like of course, like I cannot say no to that.
Yeah.
And because I feel like in a lot of ways, like especially with Canadian radio, I've gotten a lot of like, it's like the Canadian Luke Combs.
Oh,
like,
okay.
They relate my voice and stuff to him. Maybe the
right.
too. But yeah, so it's kind of cool that I get to, you know, open up for somebody that I've been compared to a lot, but also somebody that I look up to quite a bit for country music. And which is funny because we're the same age as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's awesome. And then like Tim McGraw, I remember like going like to those festivals to see Tim McGraw play.
Right.
And now I get to go and like actually open up for him.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because I've gone from like country fan to now like being the country artist.
Yeah, exactly.
And, that's unreal. And then like with Monashee being able to like headline the festival, like people are actually going to see me. Like that's the telltale. It's like, man, if people are still coming when I'm the headliner, like awesome. that means we're doing something good.
Thank you once again so much for listening, and thank you to Tyler for stopping by and sharing his story. Be sure to check out his newest single, Wild as Her, wherever you stream your music. Please also be sure to visit our website at countrymusicmademe.com. There you can listen to all of our episodes and also sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive content and also stay up to date on all of our upcoming guests. Just head over to countrymusicmademe.com and hit that subscribe button. You can also find us on any streaming platform, so if streaming is your thing, just head over to your favorite, search Country Music Made Me, and give us a follow there as well. Thank you once again so much for listening, and we'll see you next time on Country Music Made Me.